Today's masterclass is called How to Utilize Podcasting to Build Client Relationships and Grow Your Business. I really appreciate you joining me today. Okay, let me get the slides moving here. Thanks for joining me today. There we go. So just because you're here, as a small bonus, I'm going to give you my private cheat sheet, which is 20 go-to podcast templates, episode templates, segment templates to grow your audience. This is a checklist that will help you craft your first episodes of your podcast and help you when you get stuck trying to plan your 54th episode. So if you want a copy, just stick around till the very end. And also don't worry about taking extensive notes. I want you to be able to listen. And so at the end of today's masterclass, I'll tell you how to get the slides and notes, and they will be exactly what you see here. So here's what you're going to discover today. First, you'll discover why podcasts create engaged listeners that know, like, and trust you. Why podcasts increase your status as an expert. The survey information about podcast listeners that all business owners should know. How to create a continuous flow of warm client leads using a podcast, and how a podcast can actually lower your marketing and networking costs. And I also have some cool secrets for you, plus some surprising strategies that you'll definitely want to hear about. So I bet you're a bit like me. You want to generate leads. You need to generate leads. And you want to do that because you know you can help people. You want marketing to be simple and straightforward so that people can clearly see why they should buy what you're offering. But you feel like you're working way too hard with little return on that investment. You're tired of trying to cut through all the marketing noise in social media. Is anyone else frustrated with all the noise on social media? Type yes in the chat box if you are. Or you're just tired of feeling invisible while others get recognition, even though you know your service or your product or your business is better. Or you want to contribute at a higher level without having to beg for customers to notice you. Well, the real problem is that most of what we really do in marketing our businesses is completely wrong. We're placing ourselves at the center of our marketing rather than our customers. That's why most business owners spin their wheels without getting any traction and waste precious time and money. Now, the one thing you need to know is that marketing is different now. People are distracted. They're bombarded by hundreds or even thousands of marketing messages a day. And if your message doesn't stick or stick out, it might as well not even exist. Before we jump in, though, I want to give you a brief introduction to me. My name is Danny Ozment. I'm owner of Emerald City Productions. Over the past 20 years, I've been a lot of things. I've been a music educator, a conductor, an artistic planner, a fundraiser, a recording engineer, a podcast host, and mostly for the last 10 years, a business owner. I've spent my entire career performing, studying, researching, and creating content for audiences, and my specialty is helping you clarify your message and publish engaging content to create customers who trust you before they ever buy and then can't wait to tell the world about you. But I have a confession. I spent 25 years working on starting one career before I even discovered that my true passion was in a totally different career. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a musician. As a kid growing up in Short Pump, Virginia, I learned how to play drums, guitar, and sing, and I annoyed so many professional musicians to learn as much as I possibly could about music. I remember traveling to New York City to see a performance of Miss Saigon when I was 13. I went down to the orchestra pit during intermission and struck up a conversation with the drummers. They invited me to come backstage and take a look at their setup, and then invited me to sit in the pit during a show. It was loud, and it was so awesome. In high school, I got a job as a member of the local stage crew for the summer concert series at King's Dominion, and I got to carry gear around stage for people like the Beach Boys. I also played in a polka band in the Fest House at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, and played in a reggae band at King's Dominion. My passion for music led me to a master's degree in conducting. Yes, that's the guy that waves his arms in front of the orchestra. After college, I settled in for the next decade working in the arts with two different nonprofits where I performed at the Kennedy Center and Washington National Cathedral. I spent nearly my entire life studying the greatest artists, composers, and storytellers, and performing and presenting those stories to audiences. While I didn't end up on stage at Carnegie Hall, my time in the trenches as a working musician in the nonprofit arts world helped me develop a broad skill set that I still use today to help clients. I did everything from developing product launches, creating shows, planning events, fundraising, branding, and really anything technical and multimedia. Well, in 2008, my comfy life as a securely employed musician was turned upside down when my daughter, Elena, suffered a brain injury during birth. This event changed me profoundly, knowing that she would live with this for her entire life. Having never faced that type of adversity that she has, I was no longer focused on myself, but on her and on other people in the world who needed help and didn't have the ability to help themselves. So, to solve the immediate need of having the flexibility to care for Elena's special needs, I started a recording studio that very quickly became a successful business and allowed me to work from home and set my own schedule. It also gave me the opportunity to work with artists and entrepreneurs around the world. You'll see in the pictures here, the bottom left, I worked with Divisi. This is the group that inspired the Pitch Perfect book and movie franchise. I had my songs mastered at Abbey Road Studios. I was even a producer on NBC's The Sing Off, where I learned how really bad quality sound can negatively affect audience numbers. The relationships I built and the resulting travel broadened my perspective. It ingrained in me a deep appreciation for culture and served as a catalyst for personal growth and development. I love meeting new people, being in diverse settings, and creating out of the box solutions. This is also where my marketing skills began to take root and grow. I learned the basics of promotion, brand identity, content marketing, social media, and live event planning. It was during this journey of growth and transformation that I discovered podcasts. Podcasts enlarged my world. They allowed me to hear stories from people I would have never met otherwise. They allowed me to walk a mile in other people's shoes, and they further changed my perspective and opened my eyes and mind to our vast and diverse humanity. Realizing that I could use my business leadership, marketing, recording, and production skills to help podcasters and other businesses more effectively deliver their message, I shifted my business focus to consulting and podcast production because sharing stories helps people. I want to help you get your story heard. I want to help you create content that not only serves your clients and customers, but also expands their worldview. Now, if you've ever been nervous about finding new clients or worried that your marketing efforts were not reaching your ideal customer, I get it. I've been there. I've been there all the time. The turning point in my business was when one, I decided to build a deeper relationship with my clients, and two, I decided to provide them valuable knowledge and solutions based on my experience at no cost to them. It's time to stop doing too much and to start doing the right stuff. I want to help you cut through all the noise so that you can reach your ideal clients in just 3 months. And you're going to learn some key principles about that right now. So let's get into the most powerful tool for building client relationships that you've never thought of using to grow your business, and that's podcasts. So, number 1, podcasts build relationships with engaged listeners who grow to know, like, and trust you. The average podcast listener invests around 5 hours and 7 minutes per week listening to their favorite shows. They listen at home, in the car, while they're walking, at work, while they're at the gym. They probably listened to you while they were naked, getting ready in the morning. You, the podcast host, are in their ears a lot longer than someone who's in a video. They can hear your actual voice, unlike some blog they decided to read. Think about it this way. If you were hanging out with someone at their house, in their car, at the gym, while walking around at the coffee shop with them, how long would it take you to build a real bond? To know, like, and trust them? Not long at all, right? And not only that, but the average listener subscribes to 6 different shows. I saw Keith's answer was something like 65. And when someone subscribes, that means your content is pushed to their smartphone or another device. So, unlike video or a blog, they don't really have to seek you out. They are connected to you. Let me tell you a story about one of my clients. Katie Kremitzos here is a business strategist and coach. She's one of thousands of business consultants and coaches out there trying to find clients. They're all running Facebook ads. They're all staying active on social media. Almost all of them build their email lists by offering freebies on their websites, and they communicate with their lists regularly. But Katie's different. How did she build one of the largest online communities for women business owners in the US? And how does she convert a huge number of them into clients? Through her podcast. Her clients trust her before they ever hire her because they've spent hours listening to her authority and expertise on her podcast. They gain clarity on her thinking and experience. Katie gets to paint the picture of how life can be for her listeners if they do the things she talks about. Her listeners get the experience of seeing behind the curtain, and it makes it easier for them to understand her offers and the value she delivers. Because of her podcast, Katie is always talking with warm leads who want to listen and want to learn about what she has to offer them. So, the second reason, podcasts showcase your expertise and authority. In just a few hours, which is 3 or 4 episodes really of most podcasts, of sharing your knowledge, experience, stories, and advice, you really quickly establish your expertise and authority. This is true whether or not you have a bunch of certifications or awards or degrees. You will have ample time to show that you know your stuff and that you can deliver valuable service and products. Podcasts offer you the chance to share your knowledge in a very authentic way that makes a connection. How many blogs or videos would you need to create to equal this kind of level of authentic connection? Well, here's another story. This is a personal story from me of this podcast expertise effect in action. This is Mike Kim. I met him in 2016 at a podcasting conference called Podcast Movement in Chicago. Several friends that had invited me to this conference introduced me to him. He seemed like a nice guy, very fun to hang with, but nothing really earth-shattering for me in relation to my business life, partly because I didn't ask, I guess. I added his podcast to my playlist along with many other podcasts from people I met at that conference. It wasn't until 10 months later, though, that I actually got into his show and found out what I'd been missing. Mike's career is kind of like mine. It's diverse. He's worked in various forms of marketing, leadership, ministry, and art. He grew up an avid artist and writer and wanted to become an artist for Marvel Comics. He globetrotted as a musician and a songwriter. It's also where his marketing career started. He learned the basics of promotion and event planning and copywriting. He served in various ministry roles, which equipped him for coaching, organizational leadership, and consulting. He also spoke for small and large groups, speaking on behalf of causes that make positive impact on our world. He then even served for several years as a chief marketing officer of a multi-million-dollar private company before leaving that position to start his coaching and consulting business. I immediately identified with his story. So there's the authentic connection. And his experiences and advice established his expertise almost immediately. His podcast, it's called the Brand You Podcast, is dedicated to helping people build an influential and profitable personal brand. In each episode, he draws from his background in leadership, speaking, coaching, marketing to help people, and as he says, live their message, love their work, and leave their mark on the world. And it works too. I'm one of hundreds of people who discovered him through his podcast that he's helped through his masterminds, live events, boot camps, and coaching. Okay, so let's get on to reason number 3 here. The average podcast listener is a very desirable demographic that purchases what you tell them to. If you're looking for new clients who are 25 to 54 years old, who are well educated, and have money to invest in your services, products, or offers, then podcasting is a surefire way to connect them. Let's look at a bunch of stats here. These are presented by Edison research, and I'll have some from Nielsen later on. So these first are from Edison in 2017 and 2018. 48 million Americans listen to podcasts weekly. 32% of those listeners are 25 to 54, with another 31% 12 to 24, and 15% above the age of 55. So a lot of people listen to podcasts. The average listener subscribes to 6 shows. They consume 7 episodes per week. And 80% of those listeners listen to more than half or the entire episode. 31% of weekly podcast listeners have a household income of $100,000 or more per year. They also happen to be mostly Apple users at this point. 57% of podcast listeners have at least a 4-year college degree, and 63% have full-time employment. Now, per Nielsen reports in 2017, 65% of listeners said podcast ads increase purchase intent, while another 45% said they're likely to visit an advertiser's website after hearing an audio promotion. Another 42% of listeners said they would consider a new product or service after hearing a plug for a brand, while 37% use podcast ads to actually help them research brands. And this is the big one, because I will tell you that the most hated button or the most clicked button on the internet right now is the skip ad button. 57% of podcast ads that Nielsen tested outperformed video pre-rolls for intent to purchase. Almost 70% of respondents said that podcast ads actually increased their brand awareness. Reactions to podcast ads were in general positive as well. 78% said they don't mind ads or sponsors because they know it's helping the podcast. And 83% said show hosts are actually authentic and natural in reading the ads. And 74% said that sponsors were actually a good match for show content. Additionally, the study revealed that 66% tuned into podcasts to learn something new. Now, I'm just curious. Let's check the poll results now. How many of you listen to podcasts? I assume it's everyone. But let's see here. We've got one person listens to 7 to 10. One, I think that's Keith, is too embarrassed, and one person doesn't listen to podcasts yet. That's surprising. I didn't realize that. And we got a 4 to 6. Yeah. So if you just look at those numbers, podcasts are a big deal now. A lot of people are consuming them. I'll give you this past week I was actually in LA, Anaheim, to be exact, at VidCon, which is it started out as the YouTube convention. It's kind of like Comic-Con, but for video. It's now owned by Viacom. There's one in the US, there's one that happens in Europe, there's one in Australia, and there were 30,000 people there, roughly 25,000 fans of video and industry people, creators as well. And I was there, had a booth for Podfest Multimedia Expo, and I was there helping out. And we had probably 80 to 90 people come up to that booth during the week, industry members and creators that were very interested in podcasting because they felt like in video they didn't have that opportunity to really connect with their listeners all the time. Okay, so let's move on to number 4. Podcasting creates an evergreen content asset. So I bet you're a bit like me. You get inundated with marketing ideas and strategies all the time. I've had to unsubscribe to so much stuff recently just to pay attention. You may have even had podcasting suggested to you before. A lot of people think of podcasting as a marketing tactic or something you can just try out and see if you like it. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not a tactic. It's an asset. You're going to invest a lot of time and money into building content that will attract your ideal clients. It's definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon designed to build relationships with your clients and potential clients. The end result, though, is an evergreen content asset that will give you ROI for years. So if you load your first 10 episodes with your strongest and best content that speaks directly to the problems and pain points your ideal client is having, your podcast will continue to deliver ideal clients into your episode funnel 24/7. Because what happens is when someone finds you, maybe they find you on your 30th episode, podcast listeners go back to the first episode and dive in. I'll remind you that the average listener subscribes to 6 shows, and when they subscribe, the content is pushed to their device. So they don't have to seek you out. They're connected. And number 5, let's reduce some marketing and networking costs with your podcast. How much did you spend last year on direct response or print or an awareness campaign marketing? 5 grand, 10 grand, 20? I've seen insane numbers for putting an ad on the side of a bus in larger cities. I mean, I know that several of the nonprofits I worked for in DC easily spent 25 to 30 grand a year on print advertising. And I mean, I spend $5,000 a year on my own website tweaks. Probably spent another $10,000 last year on travel to conferences for networking purposes. Have you ever left a conference feeling like you didn't get as much out of the networking opportunities as you'd hoped you would? Type yes in the chat box if you had that experience. Well, so I'm here to say that podcasting can actually reduce all of these costs. The know, like, and trust factor built in your listener is way more effective at converting them into clients than most forms of marketing and face to face networking with strangers at conferences and trade shows. And you don't have to travel. You may have also heard people talk about monetizing your podcast with sponsorships and ads. While it's true that ad dollars are flooding the podcasters from things like video and TV advertising, the vast majority of ad dollars are going to major media giants who have started podcasts. You're much better off sponsoring yourself to make sure that everything your listener hears, sees, touches, and feels in relationship to your podcast is leading them to become your client. And if eliminating some marketing or advertising costs and a lot of your networking travel wasn't enough, you can actually use most of your existing content that you already have on blogs, in brochures, newsletters, on your website, and other documents to actually create the podcast content. There's no need to go reinvent the wheel. You just reuse and repurpose your existing content and then save time as well. How many of you actually have content already on a blog or a website that you think you could use in a podcast episode? Let me know in the chat box. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have been doing blogs for a while now, or they've done videos. I even have clients, they do Facebook Lives and then they turn their Facebook Live into a podcast episode just by chopping off the inevitable, hey, is everyone here? Can everybody hear me at the beginning? Okay. So let's recap. First, we talked about how podcasts can build relationships with engaged listeners who know, like, and trust you. Podcasts showcase your expertise and authority. Can everybody see those? There we go. I lost my slides for a second. Podcast listeners are a desirable demographic that purchase what you tell them to. They're an evergreen content asset, and they reduce marketing and networking costs. And here are a few other random benefits that you can also see from podcasting for your business. First, podcasts will actually improve or showcase your public speaking. So if you're pursuing a speaking career or you have to speak a lot, podcasts are a great choice for you. And if you don't like the idea of video or Facebook Live, YouTube Live, whatever, podcasts are a great alternative. And you can do them in your PJs. Not only that, but your audience can consume them in more ways than video or a blog. Remember, we talked about the car, the shower, the gym, walking down the street in New York, all that stuff. And maybe you don't need a podcast to generate client leads. Internal communication podcasts for employees are being used by major corporations already. HR professionals are using podcasts for orientation, recruitment. They share company culture and values prior to hiring. And that in turn lowers turnover rates because people know what they're getting into. These are both highly effective ways to communicate information in detail and also build relationships between leaders and employees. And bonus, you don't have to have as many boring meetings at 8 a.m. Your employees, current and future, can listen in the car on the way to work. So I hope that's been helpful. I've given you some of my best advice over the past 30 minutes, and I just wonder if you're open to giving me your attention for a few more minutes. Type yes in the chat box if you are. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Senor Keith. Thanks, Pete. Awesome. Okay. So, just out of curiosity, what do you actually really know about podcasting? Are you open minded enough to explore the possibility that a well crafted podcast that can cut through the marketing noise and reach your ideal customer could prove valuable to you and your business? Well, here's how we'll do it. I want to introduce you to Podcast Supercharger. Now, I know this is called a webinar, so you probably immediately expected this was going to be a sale. I'm not going to get all hypey. You've listened to me, you've heard my story, you know what I'm saying has helped in some way. So, first off, this is a live course. You'll be with me live on Zoom. Right now, it said on that slide before that it's a 6-week course. I've also thought about making it a 2-day course, 3 hours each day. But it's live on Zoom with me. I'll be there to answer questions immediately as they arise. So this live course includes in week 1 or module 1, I'll decide with people that register. We'll clarify your message, we'll craft your show, and we'll plan out the first 5 episodes. In that next segment, we'll talk about designing the artwork and the creative elements and creating the episode content. And then we'll move on to learning how to talk on the mic, how to interview people, how to record your first episode. Then we'll actually produce your episodes, editing, mixing, and mastering. We'll talk about all that stuff. Then we'll talk about publishing and distributing through aggregators like Libsyn and getting listed in all the major podcast directories. And finally, and most importantly, we're going to go over launch strategy, promotion, and measuring your stats so you know what your podcast is doing. Imagine going to sleep every night knowing that your podcast is attracting the right customers and repelling the wrong ones. This can happen for you. It's within your grasp. Having a relationship building podcast is the ultimate game changer because it tips the scales in your favor. And your competition is either not using this or not using it effectively. Okay. Before you make up your mind, I want to let you know about a few extra bonuses just for you because you're here. The course, the time with me, and these bonuses are collective worth over $9,000. First, everyone who is here will get my 20 go-to templates for episodes and segments, which is based on hundreds of hours of experience with podcasts. Who's excited to receive that? People seem to like this. Type excited in the chat box if you're up for it. Yay. And if you buy, you're also going to get my personal podcast pre-interview checklist. And you're going to get 2 private 30-minute jumpstart sessions with me. When other businesses, other thought leaders, bloggers hire me to help them create and produce a podcast from soup to nuts, including all that planning, content creation, and production of 5 episodes, editing and mixing and mastering, distribution, promotion, and measurement, well, it costs over $7,000. If you were to just take the concepts and skills that I teach inside Podcast Supercharger and use them to start your podcast in the way that I show you inside the course, you would experience results that could double or triple the number of ideal customers who hire you in a quarter of the time it would take you to figure out all of this stuff on your own, while still pouring money into the pit of ineffective marketing. Also, think about how valuable it would be for you as a business owner or a thought leader to create a personal connection with every client that comes to you through your podcast. Now, just one more thing. You probably wonder how much it costs. So, because you're here, I'm going to give you Podcast Supercharger, which is either 6 weeks or 6 modules live, led by me, plus the bonus of the 20 episode templates worth $750, the pre-interview checklist worth $500, 2 30-minute jumpstart sessions with me worth $750. That's a total value of over $9,000. And while Podcast Supercharger normally costs $19.47, I'm going to offer all of this to you today for just $9.47. That's over 50% off the retail price. But this offer is only available for the next 48 hours. After 48 hours, Podcast Supercharger will sell for the retail price of $19.47. And the $9,000 worth of bonuses will also disappear. So I'll send you an email after this webinar that will have the replay, the 20 go-to episode templates, and the URL to download these slides. It'll probably take me an hour or two because I have to wait for the replay to load up from Webinar Ninja here. I'll also send you a reminder email or two in the next 48 hours. But after that, you'll be paying full price for Podcast Supercharger. So go to dannyosment.com/podcast-supercharger to sign up. Our next session of Podcast Supercharger is going to start the week of July 16th. Once you invest, what I'll do is I'll request your availability and place you in a group of no more than 6 people that fits your schedule. I really want to be able to give everyone individual attention and also give you that environment of 6 people to feed on and get feedback from. I'm also going to schedule a quick 15-minute call with you to get to know you, talk about your goals, and you'll also get some homework to do before the course starts. Then we'll have our 6 live classes together and the 2 30-minute private sessions. Like I said, it could also be over 2 days, 3 hours each day. It really depends on how everybody's schedule works in the group. So let's recap the benefits here. I stand 100% behind Podcast Supercharger. And if you're unhappy with it for any reason, all you got to do is let me know within 30 days and I'll give you a full refund. There's literally no risk for you to try Podcast Supercharger. And if you apply the lessons I teach inside, you will create a podcast that will deliver customers who trust you before they buy and then can't wait to tell the world about you. Get the tools and resources you need to immediately jump to the head of the line in getting better customers and more sales. Get Podcast Supercharger that covers all the necessary steps to creating a podcast, including crafting, creating, designing, recording, producing, publishing, promoting, and much, much more. Skip the trial and error because this program has already been proven to work. I've crafted it working with other podcasters. I've learned from currently 15 clients who have successful podcasts and what's working for them and what's not working for them. I'm not going to waste your time with fancy ideas that I'm coming up with. This is stuff that is proven to work. So let me ask you one more question. Have you considered what it will really cost you not to join Podcast Supercharger and implement its ideas? Every good business leader knows that success is based on smart, forward-thinking, wise decisions. You're currently in a position you're not happy about. The hours are long. Your marketing dollars seem to do little or nothing to get you new business. And you're spending nights wondering if you'll ever get off the hamster wheel of working so hard without significant progress. I've shown you an opportunity to take control of the situation, but you're still not sure exactly what to do. Well, as I see it, you have 3 options. First, you could try to figure this out on your own. You could look elsewhere for help, learn another framework, spend more time working through that entire process. Second, you could do absolutely nothing. You could stay with the exact same marketing plan you have in place right now, accept that this is just how it is for small, medium, and large businesses, thought leaders, and just suck it up. Or third, you could give me a chance. You could give Podcast Charger a try at no risk, work it alongside what you're doing right now, and see how far you go. Of those 3 options, what's going to be easier for you? And if not now, when are you going to do it? Make a decision. And if it's option 3, then sign up for this limited time special offer by going to dannyosment.com/podcast-supercharger. You can also click on the offers tab at the bottom. I believe it should be working now. Let me know if it's not. Thank you guys for being here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'll stick around for a little bit to do so. I'm very happy that the weather held out and didn't shut off the power here in Franklin, Tennessee. So go ahead, if you have any questions, enter them in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, Keith is asking about marketing podcasts. Are there ways to use Google Analytics to help raise your podcast closer to the topic to be found? Yes, SEO is very it's challenging and easy at the same time with podcasts. So, first let me talk about challenging part. The challenging part of podcasting SEO is that Apple, who has been the dominant factor in podcasting for a decade or more, they have built-in weaknesses in the Apple Podcasts iTunes search engine. Essentially, when you search for a podcast, it will only look at the title field and the author field. So that's the title of the show, the title of the episode, and then the author. So you, the host, or whatever. So it's weak. So you have to do some things in SEO, and this is one thing we'll talk about in the course of how to choose a title that gets all the keywords that you need, but is easy to understand. So the creative title, the the Keith show, the Julie show, those are not good titles for a podcast because no one will find you because they can't search the description. You may put a beautiful description about what your show's about, they can't find it. And then so you might want to say something like Julie Diley, blogger, food blogger, chef, awesome, progressive, whatever, in the author line to help with that. Now, in terms of Google, this is where the strength is, and with some of the new stuff that Google is doing, it has the potential to be earth-shattering for podcasters. So first of all, when you do a podcast, a smart decision is to actually transcribe each podcast. There are inexpensive services out there that will do transcriptions for $1 a minute, or there's a couple of automatic transcription services that use AI that are 10 cents a minute and things like that. But what happens is when you speak for 20 minutes, you know, you're easily going to have 10,000, 15,000 words. Transcribe that and put that on your site. Basically, you will put each podcast episode on your site as like a blog entry in a way. And you'll have a player on that thing, but then you can also put the transcription on. First of all, it helps hearing impaired people, helps you be compliant that way. But then it also gives you this huge amount of SEO material, lots of keywords. Because if you're doing a 20-minute episode, you're going to say that keyword multiple times. And it's very helpful. So you can use Google Analytics that way to really get you up. Now, the exciting things, first of all, Google has just introduced the Google Podcast app for native app for Android, which means Android users, which up until now have not really had a good app, a good native app. Android had one for a little while, but it went away. Now have the opportunity of an effective podcast app. And since 65% of podcast listeners listen on a Apple device currently, 75% of hosts are Apple users. Right now, you've got 55% of the world that use Android devices that aren't being represented. So there's a potential right now for huge growth in podcasting because so many people will be able to discover it. Hopefully that answered your question, Keith. Clarify in the chat if I didn't get to the depth of it. Thumbs up. Awesome. So let me talk a little bit more about the course. I realize that for some people, an hour a week is all you can give, and that would be a huge commitment. I also realize that other people are really anxious to get started and want to move forward quickly. So that's why I mentioned a couple of different options for doing this course. That if we get 3 people who want to do it weekly and then 3 people who want to do a couple days, I'd be happy to do that. Where you know, we could do a couple days in the evening, 3 hours, or we could do a weekend, sort of like a virtual conference or mastermind course meetup or whatever. Um, so that's why I present those 2 options. Okay, any more questions? If not, I said I would go 45 minutes with the questions included, and we're just a minute over. Um, if anyone has any less questions, I'm happy to answer it. But if not, I'll go ahead and sign off, and you guys will get the replay in probably a couple hours once I get it uploaded. Um, Webinar Ninja doesn't let you do all the after emails the way I wanted to do. So you'll get some emails from me on through my email system. And remember, 48 hours. This price is good for 48 hours, and after that, it goes back up to the full price. Okay. Thanks everybody for being here. I'll probably do one more of these webinars or master classes, free trainings, whatever you call them, before the class starts on the 16th. So if you found this helpful, please feel free to share the replay, or feel free to share the registration in a couple days once I reset it. I'll probably let you know. But I hope to have you guys in the class. I would love to see you there because, like I said, I believe in podcasts. I think they're the best form of new media because they allow people to tell their stories. They allow people to share a lot of information in depth and really connect with their audience. And I hope I can help you do that at some point. So I'll see everybody later. Thanks for stopping by.